Okay. Welcome to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast, episode 283.
From the belly of the Beast Coast, Glastonbury, Connecticut, this is the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. We talk about all the fun shit that happens on the trails that most normal people don't care about. The language we use is fucking explicit and raw like the trails we run on, so don't listen with your kids! Cultra is brought to you by our Patreons and supporters, and we are 112% listener supported, and support is good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. I'm your host, Art Byram, and I am joined by one member, full card carrying member of the Cultra crew, and that is Celeste Fong, a ding dong.
Good morning, kids.
All right, and I have a whole room full of people who are going to talk tonight about anybody, I have a trivia question. Anybody know what my favorite number is?
112.
112. That's right. And lots of hands up in the room here. So tonight we're going to talk about the CUT112. This is going to be an evergreen episode about how to crew for the CUT112. It's not going to give you the basics if you don't, if you've never crewed before, although it will give you a lot of information along that, to that end. But it's really kind of designed to, kind of like a how-to. We're going to give you the toolkit, and we're going to show you all of the things you need to support your runner and, get it done. And I think maybe Michelle's going to kind of kick us off on this. And so we have Michelle Pom Pom O'Neill.
Hello.
So Michelle, maybe you want to take it from here, and then I'll just jump in and distract you. So
Sure. So just to give a little background about why we decided to do this, I mean, as everyone probably knows, if you're anywhere within 112-mile radius of Connecticut, the cut is coming up in the summer, or, well, technically it's the spring, but, it kind of kicks off the summer racing season. And I know I look forward to the cut every year. I've had 3 really great experiences with it, with crewing and pacing. I've crewed and paced for Tobias twice, and then once for Chris Bessick. So that's my experience with it. And I kind of wanted to see about other people who have done it, who've crewed it, paced it, run it, some combination thereof, and get a nice little group together. So I'm going to throw it to Sarah Porras, who has also had a lot of experience, and just tell us about yourself and your experience with the cut, if you don't mind.
Thanks for having me. I am not a ultra runner. You guys are crazy. But I met Art a long time ago while he was training for the first cut. And so I joined for a little bit. I wouldn't call it pacing. I couldn't even keep up with them. It was like they've been running since, I think you started it the first year, like 1 in the afternoon. So it was early morning the next day. And I met with them and ran about 10 miles with them. And I think I might have helped out a little more at that point. And then did a little more the next year, helped individually crew 1 or 2 people, at least partially, not the whole way. And then in the fall of 2022, I walked the whole cut with somebody Art knows, Peggy Byram, and another friend, Sharon Spinelli. So we walked the whole thing. We're like, what is this about? We need to know. We need to see what the big fuss is about. And so we spent 14 different hikes, and we did the whole thing. And that was really great. And you guys are nuts. I just can't do it at night. You can't follow the trail in half the places. It's insane. And I, mad respect after just walking it. And but it's amazing, and there's some amazing views, and it's just a really cool experience to walk the spine of Connecticut. So it's a really neat thing.
very good.
I like that you called it the spine of Connecticut, Sarah, because that would mean our state has severe scoliosis.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay with it. Proud of it.
And Andy, since you're off mute, why don't you just tell us who you are and your experience with the cut?
Sure. I'm Andy O. I guess like Sarah, I helped out when Art and Company first ran the first one ever. I met Art and them all like that going into the evening of a very terrible day for them, not me. And I got to be one of the first people to hear of the Shadow Bear. in Art's hallucinogenic state, out in the middle of somewhere between Farmington and Plainville. I volunteered at it a number of years. I earned my first ever DNF trying to run the cut undertrained in 2018, thinking I've run 100 before, I can do this. And that was wonderfully humbling. As a result, met some great friends, namely Becky Burke and Simon Edgett. Had a lot of love from a lot of other people. And then trained like hell for it in 2020. And Art was so dead set on me not having any competition. He canceled that year, and for no other reason. And had some great support from my great friend Mike Dolan and JT, who is not known in this community. He's a road guy, but a wonderful human nonetheless. And he proved the entire way, all 30 something hours of it. And Art saw me through to the finish. And I get verklempt every time I look at my cut buckle, because it wasn't a race. It was just, me finishing that day. But that was one of my fondest memories and greatest accomplishments in my 46 plus years on Earth.
You did set the FKT that day, though, Andy. Gotta say that day.
Thank you. I humbly held that FKT for I think 22 hours, and then was beat, by the next day. But that's okay. Who cares? It wasn't, I wasn't out to set new records. I just wanted to do it. But I've been out there in some way, shape, or form, I think every year, to be somewhat helpful. It's always great to be able to jump back in. And I even made notes. I have a list of notes on my computer screen next to y'all's lovely faces for when we get to the advice portion. So looking forward to be able to have that chat.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, Billy, how about you? What's your experience, Billy Baker?
Yeah, I've completed the cut twice. I attempted it a third time in 2020 when it was officially canceled, self-supported, and did not complete it. And then I've also crewed and paced it for my brother, who's also done the cut twice. And it is everything that everyone says it is. It is the hardest darn 100-miler out there. I think a lot of people underestimate it because they're like, hey, Connecticut is this tiny small state. It's relatively flat. But the Metacama Trail is absolutely bruising. It's brutal. And my biggest piece of advice for anyone considering, racing it, crewing it, don't underestimate this Beast Coast race called the CUT112, because it is the real deal. But Art, you said it to me. You're one of a handful of people that can say that they have traversed the state of Connecticut by foot. And to be able to wear that badge of honor, or that belt buckle of that, is something truly, truly special and amazing. And the challenge is worth going after and taking, but don't under prepare for it, because it is going to punch you in the face for sure.
Right on. Oh, you
Scrape
just gave
you
me
in the knee
goosebumps.
and twist you in the ankles and knock you in the head. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think we kind of launched into this a little bit, and I just want to kind of reiterate that for those who might be listening to this wondering what it's all about. So the cut starts up at Rising Corners, which is on the border of Connecticut and Massachusetts, almost in the middle. It's right where that little notch is, just to the right of that little notch in the top of the state on that border. And it kind of cuts down the middle of the state, but then it takes like a big lightning bolt right in the middle, and then continues down to Guilford to the Long Island Sound. So it's roughly, it's always difficult because every time you check it, it's slightly different. So it's somewhere between like 15 and 18,000 feet of climb. And it may be quite more than that actually by the time you climb up and down all the boulders that that aren't being picked up on your watch. But it's, something that takes people a long time to do. It's not something that, most people don't finish under 30 hours on this. Nobody's ever finished under 24 on this. And that includes some of the top runners out there. many of the top runners that I know of have DNF'd this. They've just run into trouble there. So there seems to be a curse for some of the, for some of the faster people there too. So not to get everybody sidetracked, but I thought I'd just kind of reframe that a little bit. And it's a community event that involves all of the different running clubs and trail communities in Connecticut kind of get together for this. So it's a lot of fun. And Andy's role in this, I have to say, he's like a graduate level crew. He's like my personal crew. Like after it's been many hours on the thing, Andy's like the one who's like crewing me usually at the finish line and some other, and at Mutt's End, which is about halfway. So
I actually have a number of my bullet points are about that, Art. So thank you.
Oh God, I can't wait.
Nothing bad. No, but that's the reality is you've got, I think people who are used to, quote unquote, used to doing 100-milers and, maybe there's a 30-hour cutoff. And there's, an RD that one is getting paid or paying themselves because there's an actual entrance fee and the money's going to them first. And they can afford to hire someone while they nap in the van for a couple hours, but not Art effing Byram. No. He maintains his luxurious mane and rosy complexion through insomnia and not eating. And I mean, look at him, it shows.
Yeah.
That's lovely. But speaking of, fast runners, people who have really like chewed up and spit out the cut, we've got Tobias El Nino, who is not El Nino anymore, the chosen one. You've done it and you've crewed it and paced it as well. So want to talk about your experience a little bit as well?
Yeah, definitely. I originally, I think, intended to do it in 2020 and then it got canceled because Andy couldn't have any competition. And then I came back in 2021 and finished it in 2021 and then came back in 2022 and finished it again and then came back in 2023 to crew and pace for Chris Bessick. And so I paced the whole butt, which was a lot of fun. More for me than for Bessick, but yeah, so.
Very good. And the butt, just for clarifications, is the back end of the back Ultra Traverse. That's basically the last 50 miles of the same course. And that starts at the ass crack of dawn on Saturday morning after all the CUT112 runners start at 8 o'clock on Friday. And then at 5:15-ish, something like that, the 50-mile race starts, or the 50-mile run starts from the parking lot of a liquor store on the Berlin Turnpike, which is probably the most, and I'm still surprised that we're not all thrown in fucking jail right now.
Yeah.
And Celeste, you did that last year, right? You did the butt?
Yeah, I did the butt last year. Yeah, I crewed the previous 2 years and I did the butt last year. Yeah. So that's the best part of the course too, except for Tri Mountain is stupid, but the butt is fabulous. I highly recommend that course.
That's awesome.
I've been hearing that the butt is excellent for years.
I mean, the butt.
Andy, we can try to fit you in.
Let's see how many people we can get into that butt, Art.
Okay, I think so, because there's a lot of time you can spend there too.
This podcast just got canceled in Texas as a result of that conversation.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, there's truth to this though, because actually, although it starts at it starts at dawn, whenever the sun rises there. I think it's like 5:15, something like that. In the morning, you actually have until like almost 24 hours to finish that. It's a lot. I have to do the math, but you have a lot of time to finish that you could really walk in the 50.
Oh yeah.
Assuming you're just like not
me,
not doing that.
Slow girl in the back.
And the only other thing just to keep in mind, just to let all crews, just to remind them of it, or anybody's thinking about it, is that there's the one rule that we have is that there's no sleeping. Okay. So we don't want this to be a multi-day race. It is a multi-day race, but it's not one that you sleep during. Not for the crew. The crew can sleep. It's just the runners. There's no sleep till Guilford. So if you sleep, you didn't really accomplish. You did something amazing if you went the distance, but it's different than what we're trying to do here. So that's back to you, Michelle.
Thanks. I'm not sure. I know Brian Vanderheiden's on, and Brian has run it and he has crewed. So Brian, you want to talk a little bit about your experience too?
Hey, Brian, we still can't quite hear you there. Nope. Okay.
Oh. Technical difficulties.
Let me try that. No. Still.
Just so you know, moving closer to the screen doesn't help him. I tried.
I think maybe if we all move closer to the screen, Brian, I think you're showing up as muted there. So, but why don't we come back to him, and Brian, just jump in when you can. How about now? Nope, no good. So maybe we'll move on, Michelle.
Sure. Yeah. Brian, sorry, we'll come back to you though. Whenever you get it working again, just jump right in. Thank you. And yeah, I don't want to speak for Brian, but I know I've seen him. I watched him run. He did a phenomenal job when he did the cut. And then he also helped to crew and pace for a runner last year and saw them along the course. And I know he's done a lot of recon on that as well. So this is great. I thank you everybody for sharing your experiences, because I felt like that would be good to kind of have a little background in, why we all specifically are here tonight and what we're here to talk about. And as I said, I've crewed it quite a few times and paced it a couple times. I got to give you credit, Tobias, for even asking me to pace you through some of these places, because Celeste, I'm not a fast runner either. And as I said before, Tobias really is. And so being asked to kind of pace someone who is so fast, it not only gave me a little bit of stress, but it also gave me a huge ego boost, because I was like, yes, he thinks I can do this. So if he thinks I can do this, I can do this. And I think looking back on it, the reason that I believe he asked me, now that I've crewed for him several times and I've crewed for other people, is because you want people with you who can keep your spirits up. You want people who can keep you moving. It doesn't have to be super fast, especially late in the race, because you're not going to be moving fast as the runner. So you want people who are just going to keep you going. They're going to make sure that you don't quit. And I feel like that is one of the most important things, and one of the most important lessons I learned as crew and as a pacer, is that you just got to keep your person positive, focused, and moving. And even when they think maybe they are going to quit, you don't tell them, well, if it's okay if you want to stop. Obviously, if they're hurt, if they've got flesh dangling, or if they've got bones poking out or whatever, that's a different story. But if they're just in the dumps, kind of feeling crappy about themselves, you don't want to let them give into that and then quit, because they're always going to be what if, would have, could have, should have. And Andy was there last year when we were crewing and pacing for Bessick. He was at a really low point at that liquor store at the beginning of the butt. And we were kind of just lying to him, yeah, you look great. Your feet look fine. Keep going.
I was just thinking about that as you just before you said it. I have nightmares about what the bottoms of Bessick's feet looked like. It was, gross is an understatement. Something out of Evil Dead 2 is more realistic. It was really some torn up flesh, and me personally, I was like, shit, we can't tell them to keep going. But thankfully, there was, you got Pom Pom and others who maintain that PMA. And to echo what you said, Michelle, that keeping up the positive mental attitude and ensuring that folks keep upright. Your runner's going to tell you to screw off, in no uncertain terms when they're feeling like shit. But it's important to be able to have people who pace and crew you that know you, and know what it's like when you're, when you're at your worst. Sarah put her hand up there.
I just have a question. If you know, what's the longest stretch between road crossings / aid stations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the longest stretch um, between aid stations is, I would say that it's not that far actually. I think
it's like 7 or 8 miles, right?
Yeah, like I'm showing like 8.
No,
like
the first one is 7. I know that. From the start
actually,
to the first one is 7 something.
That's the longest one. Yeah, because we made them a little bit further apart in the start, at the beginning.
Because I think that matters, because that helps as a crew member. You only have 3.5 miles till the next one. I will see you in 3.5 miles. It's there. I'll have this. I'll have that. You'll be fine. Let's just get to that. Obviously the basics of crewing or things like that, and it's easy on the cut because there's so many road crossings and things like that.
So that's really important. I think you're right to break it. As a runner, we're always trying to take things. You never want to stand at the line and say, today I have 112 miles to go, or even, that, or today I have a 5K to race at my, at my maximum heart rate. All those things are terrifying. So it's much easier to say, listen, I'll see in 5 miles. I'll see you in 3 miles,
And the other thing about the course is it's sort of split up into tiny, small aid stations, small road crossings, and then opportunities for bigger ones. And those bigger ones are so much fun for everybody, especially the first day. And it's like a Marathon Inn is the reservoir, and it's a huge parking lot, and there's tons of people. And then of course there's Mutt's End, which is the liquor store, and the Mobile Mart. Can we not leave out the Mobile Mart? And it's amazing Mexican food that they sell in there, greasy as crap, but amazing. So, and then there's Gaida, and there's Rogers, and there's just so many great big spots that can incentivize your runner and say, oh my God, Rogers is the party. There's going to be barbecue. There's going to be pierogies, or whoever cracked out the pierogies that time. Right? There's going to be Kurt Zimmerman's, amazing setup. There's Gaidas, and it's hot dogs and milkshakes. I mean, it's one carrot on the stick after another.
Yes.
I made a note about that type of thing, Sarah. Sorry, Art, if I'm butting in, just tell me to shut up. But
no, go ahead, Andy.
I think one of the important things for crew folks to remember, while Sarah mentioned the small handful of actual commerce that's available near some of the stations, not everything's open 24 hours, so it depends. I think it's important to manage expectations in that. The liquor
store is not going to be open at 5:15. Sorry, everybody, the liquor store. But
right. But I think importantly, with even for the shorter segments between crossings, we do come to the fact that that equates to a fairly long amount of time that the crew has to wait. And an important thing to remember for all those crew folks is, they can bust their asses in their van over to the next parking area and wait for a couple hours. But there's nothing around most of them. So it would really behoove them to spend some time with Google Maps way ahead of time to see where the convenience stores that are actually open and what their hours are, so that they can get a feel for what the runner needs. Because we all know, any of us who run, long distances, you could say you want an orange slice 2 hours from now, and then 2 hours from now when your stomach is shit, and you need, some chicken broth. That might not be able to materialize in a dirt parking lot in the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m. So is there a Greek diner, within 10 miles that your van can get to in order to get you that stuff? And I would strongly recommend that runners spend some significant time planning with their crews accordingly on that kind of thing.
And I would say, just to add on that, Andy, if you're crewing, if you have the ability to come to Connecticut and find the road crossings, because, when Peg and Sharon and I just walked it, we struggled some mornings to find where where the road crossing was, struggled. And if you're doing it in the middle of the night, if it's just a wide spot in the road, and your runner really needs you, and you can't find it. That could be a real panic.
Gotcha. And we've had people, on occasion, runners have to be prepared to perhaps miss their aid station. And I have to say that the group that's running this is they're pretty experienced in that, but just to keep in mind, it happened to us, on more than one occasion where, things just didn't work out. Our crew was just at like they were like, 20 yards up the road around a bend, and we just kind of blew through across the street, and next thing you know, we're in the woods. The temperature drops to 40, it starts pouring rain, the wind picks up, and we're we're holding on, trying not to get hypothermia. So, but luckily we had the right gear with us, and we were able to just throw a jacket on the coldest people and press on. So I know that we're talking about road crossings and things like that, so I want to talk about some of the tools that we have. And first, Brian Vanderheiden's back too. So can we hear you, Brian?
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey. I tried my computer, that didn't work. I went back on the phone. I took out my earpiece, so now I'm back on.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome.
So Brian, just to give a little bit of background, Brian was there year one, out on Route 6 and a bunch of other places too. I think Brian and I might have met on Twitter somewhere or something like that. So he's been there for quite a bit. So always been a good supporter and a good athletic supporter, and a good friend and a good runner. So glad to have you here, Brian. So
thank you. Yeah, if I could just throw a few words of wisdom, it's not an easy race for sure. I was supposed to run it in 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and then I decided to run it in 2021. Trained my butt off. Felt great for probably 75% of the race. And then the bear snuck up behind me, and had to carry him the rest of the way. And based on how I was looking at the finish, my wife has forbid me from ever running the race again. Doesn't mean I can't come help some people. And who knows, maybe my son and I will run it someday. So but I helped Jess Crandall in her win last year, and that was great to kind of be on the other side of it for most of the race.
Very good. Yeah, excellent. So that's great, Brian, and looking forward to seeing you there again this year. So I would like to kind of just maybe go over the because some people might be able to watch this on video. So we're going to have this up on YouTube, I think, when we're all done. So one of the things to keep in mind is that we have a spreadsheet that shows all of the major road crossings. There's probably a couple in there that may not be listed, but basically we have a list of 20 road crossings plus the finish and the start. So on this, you'll see, if you're looking on now, you'll see aid station numbers. Those correspond to numbers that are on the map that's just below. So like here, I'll do the math for you. If you look at number 1 here, where it says start, you go down to number 1 here. Okay, so that will tell you basically where you're going to be at that. And that gives you just like a rough thing. Now, there are also 2 different things. There's the name of the station, and that's what everybody refers to, so that we don't get things mixed up. The key ones are obviously the start, which is Rising Corners, and then Rogers Orchard, where there's a somewhere around a 10 o'clock cutoff, 10 o'clock p.m. So you want to make sure that you get there before then. There's no phone service at Rogers Orchard, or very spotty at best for a lot of people. So, be prepared for that. And then there's Carey Street, and I put that in red because nobody's allowed to go there under any circumstances. You got to make a really good case to do that. We will man. That's the only aid station that we'll be providing. every other place. We're expecting runners to be fully crewed. Now, we do all the people who are kind of out there, everybody's got a gallon or two of water typically in their, in their trunk or something to eat or whatever. But really, we're looking to have everybody be self-supported, through their own organization. And if you don't have a crew, you want to post up right away and ask for help early. And, there's a lot of people that can help as long as you let us know early enough.
And that's actually a good point that you just made, Art, because I know right about now some people are looking to assemble their crews. So we have, and I mean we like the royal we, there is the CUT112 Facebook group, and that's a good place to post things if you do need a crew or pacers and you don't have them assembled. You can always post in that group and people will kind of say, yeah, I'm available, or yeah, I'd love to help out. And there were some questions on that. And one of the questions was about getting to the start. So I just wanted to ask you, Art, what do you recommend as far as a time for people to get to the start?
Yeah, so the race is going to start at 8 o'clock, but we have a pre-race meeting that usually starts at around quarter of. And I like to leave enough time for us to be able to walk to the start so that we're not running to the start to try to start at 8. I like to start on 8. It's something that we should do, is start on time, right? So you probably want to get there between 7 and 7:15 would be a good idea. 7:15 is fine. If you want to get there a little bit early and kind of drink in the vibe, that's great too, and this way you get settled. And because it's one of the few, it's a really magical time, the morning of the cut. We gather in a field. We're all, it's like kind of like gathering in the doorway of an airplane before we jump out, right? So we're all kind of like looking at each other saying, yep, here we go. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun. And it's the one time that really we're all together. Okay. And after that, you'll have the first couple miles, maybe with a larger group. And then, you'll probably find your core group of people and then your crew. So, I would take advantage of that time because it's quite a group that runs this and that takes part in this. So it's like, it's a fun time. I'm always amazed just like to be in the company of people who would endeavor to do such a foolish thing. So, that's my long answer. So like 7 o'clock is a good time.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck in line at bib pickup.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes. And also go to the bathroom, go before you go. So there are no porta johns. Really, there's some porta johns somewhere, I guess, but like, at the finish, there's porta johns, and I think that there might be one or two other somewhere, but I can't really remember where they are. So
Penwood State Park's got one.
Yeah, I was gonna say
thank you.
Penwood.
There you go. I knew there was a couple places. Penwood, that's good. So
Giuffrida sometimes too.
The reservoir has one or two. Yeah.
This is like a plethora. You can there's like porta johns everywhere, people. So,
If anyone knows where a place to take a good shit is, it's an ultra runner.
That's right. I think that's like kind of like wherever
Castle
you
Craig.
are. So
I was going to ask a quick question because I've never stayed overnight at the start line. Has anyone in this group ever stayed up there, or do you all just kind of drive up there and get there for 7:15?
Morning of.
Morning of?
Morning of.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that was another question people had, is if you wanted to stay near the start, where would you recommend staying? And I was like, I don't have a good answer for that because I always just drive there.
I crewed for a guy, and he drove in from New York State, and I think he got there really late and he slept in his van at the start. But I think there's a private residence next door, private residence across the road. It might not be a good plan.
That's the other thing to consider here. And just to kind of reiterate is that we do this because it's a fun thing to do, and we also do it as to raise money for Connecticut Forests and Parks. They don't endorse this. They have nothing to do with this. They have complete plausible deniability on this. Can I say that, Sarah? Is that okay?
Not my area of law, Art, but okay, go ahead and say that.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just gotta check here. So, so here's the thing, and like if things go sideways here, like let's say that the crews are too loud at a certain aid station or two, or cause blocking of traffic, or cause a distraction to other drivers, and the police take notice and come and tell us that we have to leave, then we have to leave like immediately. Or if neighbors or landowners or homeowners or any of the property owners, they all give their land so voluntarily for these trails, and in no way do we want to put any of that in jeopardy, because so we're at their mercy. So Andy has something to add to that.
I just want to thank you for raising that, Art, because as I mentioned before, I made a list. My number one bullet simply is be quiet.
Be
That's
quiet.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, because of all the things you just said.
Okay. Yeah. Because it is because it has happened after the event that I've gotten emails from landowners who suggested that there were issues, and since then I'm able to address those, but we can't have that. That's not it's not a good thing. So and if that happens, honestly, then that'll be the last year of the cut, because
how the hell did they find out, Art?
I don't know how they got their number, but how they got my number and in my email, but people found out. It meant enough to them that they reached out, and I'm glad that they communicated with me, because it was a really good thing that allowed us to recognize something that we should have seen already, and address it. So, and maybe that's why nobody's allowed at Carey Street. So, and if you look at it, that's a tough spot, because that's right after you come through Ragged Mountain. So, we don't want too many, we don't want any more of that. So enough said. I think that in general, most trail runners tend to be very good stewards of the land. But also remember that as a crew, we can all get so carried away, and think that there's power in numbers. So when we start all piling up at Edgewood or another place like that, like, let's just keep that in mind, that we want to stay under the radar on this whole thing. That's what we're shooting for. We want to stay so that we're not having anybody tell us that they don't want us to do this anymore, because it's a good thing, overall. So I'm
gonna try to insert some humor here, but I will tell you without shame what I did one time. I think it was the second year, and we were all piled up at the MDC reservoir, and that's an interesting layout. You go through like a gate to get to the parking lot, and then there's another gate, and there's like the porta potty and a couple of technically it's like a no parking zone, or it's handicap parking, and then there's the entrance to the reservoir trails. And we didn't and that's where it's shady, right near the porta potty and past that second gate, and it's like not really official parking. And that first time there was a bunch of us waiting for our for runners at the same time, and 2 or 3 cars were parked on that other side of the gate. You're not supposed to. And the MDC police were trolling and pulling up. And I went up to them, do you know? And I batted my eyelashes, and I was all nice and bubbly. I pulled maybe a Celeste on them, and so the cops, and I was just like, do you know what's going on here? These people are running this amazing thing. And I tried to get them shifted and into it so that we didn't have to move our cars, which were in the perfect spot to catch the runners. And it's always been 90 something degrees and 90% humidity, right, Art, that first day. And so it was just a really hot day. We all wanted to be in the shade. And so it can't hurt. You use your judgment. I think Peggy did that the first year, right? Peggy was on roadsides waiting for you in Jordan, and she had to kind of charm the cops too, because they were wondering what the heck this lady was doing out there in the middle of the night. But you have to use your judgment and on how well that'll work. And Art's right. 90% of the time, it's yes, we'll just move. And one more little comment: having the Connecticut walk book is really vital, I think, for runners. Study the walk book. The walk book's going to give you better detail than this little generic map attached to the spreadsheet. It'll give you breakdown of like 5 to 10 miles per page of the whole thing, trail by trail. And so it's like $20 or $25 through the CFPA. And it's really vital to have.
Sarah, I was just going to ask where people can obtain a copy of this walk book.
They could Google it. I mean, I think directly through the CFPA is the way to give them the money. I think you can probably find it online, but I haven't looked recently.
There I am trying to plug the business, but all right.
Yeah, no, well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no, right. Go to the CFPA and order one.
Yeah, Connecticut Forests and Parks. One thing just to mention on that, as we're talking about the course itself, one thing to keep in mind is that every single year the course changes. Okay, so, and this year's no exception. So just to kind of give it a rundown. So if you're looking at, not to like undo what you just said, but there are certain sections that have definitely changed. So all you ever want to do on the course is to follow the blue blazes, right? Except when you're at the, except at like mile 93 or whatever mile that is. So, so I guess what I mean by that is that like just some changes for this year. Changes this year, if you get to just before you get to Orchard Road, okay, so it's after Castle Craig, which is like Meriden and Hubbard Park and that whole section there. You're going to be heading the section where you used to cut across some driveways and then cut across the overgrown power lines before you made the right through the mud pit. All that shit's gone now. So there's some wonderful single track there that's very well marked that will get you there. And there's also a like a little, you used to run on this steep ledge, where you could kind of fall off. Now it kind of does this square out and around, and it's all well marked. If you're on the trail and you don't see a blue blaze, you're off trail. So, so pay attention to that. Let's see, there's also there's a bridge just after Short Mountain now that gets you across that stream by the golf course, just before you get to Edgewood. So, if that doesn't make any sense to you, look it up on a map. And then the other like hot tip is the hardest part to follow on the whole course. Most of this you can do without any kind of a map, I would think, just by following the blazes. The hardest part to follow are the roads and the most popular sections to get it exactly right. When you get to the top of Castle Craig, there's enough side trails that it's very distracting to be able to navigate your way through there sometimes. But know your road sections, like study those so that because 2018, we just missed the left onto Lover's Lane and we ended up in the middle of Guilford, literally a mile and a half from the finish, and Stacy was going to call her dad. So it got pretty ugly, after 41 hours into it. So, know your road sections so that there's no, because those are not a lot. They've changed out telephone poles and things like that. So,
can I interject on something, Art?
Yeah, please.
This is, I guess, for the crews too, but for the runners is try to put some sort of GPX file on your phone, whether it's through All Trails or whatever. I know when I ran, it saved me probably 3 or 4 times. Just I went off trail. It went off trail, maybe a couple 100 yards here, maybe a quarter mile there, but it definitely was helpful to try and find my way back to the blazes. And if you put your phone in basically offline mode the whole time, I think I still had 25-30% battery left by the end of the race after 30 hours.
Yeah,
Brian, I second the GPX. It's really strong. There's a great app called Gaia GPS. It's a free app. You can put the GPX right on there. And for the road sections, it's really nice because it gives you confidence when you don't see the blue blazes specifically. Speaking of
your GPS will work in offline mode. You don't need to have your phone on cellular mode for it to work with the GPS.
And speaking of GPS, this is great for the crew. If your runners have an iPhone, have them share their location through Find On. because then you can see approximately how far out they are from each aid station as they're coming. And you can plan, if you're going to go and grab a Big Mac or not, based on where they are, or you have an idea of if there's a problem, right? If that dot hasn't moved in a really long time, hey, something's up. But that was something that was really useful as a crew member to be able to see my brother exactly where he was and kind of get an estimate of how much longer we had until you would arrive at each stop.
Yeah. So again, that's important that's a great point to raise, because ultimately runners are responsible for their own safety on this. I do not have any way to track you guys through this. We do our best to kind of keep an eye on you, but that's really up to you as the individual runner and your crew to keep an eye to make sure that you've made it through. So if your
in
runner
years past, it has
just,
helped.
I just want to finish this, Celeste. I'm sorry. If you are dropping, the one thing that you definitely need to do is you need to let me know. Art Byram, you got to let me know. My name's going to be all over the sheet, and if you're dropping out, you got to let me know so that we're not sending Andy up to the top of Castle Craig looking for you. So,
yeah, another thing that's helpful for Art is for the crew. Your crew to update your location on the Facebook page. So like when you pass, Giuffrida Park, if your crew updates, then Art kind of knows where all the runners are throughout the event. And it's a lot easier because then if we haven't heard from a specific runner in hours, we can be like, okay, have you heard from your runner? Where are they? Where were they last? It's a good thing to have your crew do.
very good. Very good.
I was actually going to ask about that, Celeste. Thanks for bringing it up. Like, in the past we've relied a little bit on crews posting on Facebook, and we hope people do it. And there are others who sometimes check in with, like, it's Art or Kurt or another volunteer. Is there going to be a more formal way that people can check in? I guess I'll pose that to Art.
Yeah. I would say that right now, I mean, if you're just like, say that you're listening to this and like you don't know anybody and you don't know, but you're a member of the Facebook group, which you want to be, the CUT112 Facebook group. If you just post it up there, that helps us so much. Ideally though, it's mostly I'm concerned about the people who are in the front of the pack, like the very front leaders, so that I don't miss you guys. And then if you're towards the back of the pack, let us know there. Or if you're isolated, like, because then we don't, this way we just know, and it helps us plan. Because if you think about it, if you're like 3 minutes, just like a couple of minutes different pace than other people, by the end of this, you can be more than 12 hours behind somebody, and that's that's a lot of time. So we want to make sure that we have people where that we know what's going on, so as best we can.
In the past, I think there's been like a spreadsheet with all the runners' names and all the aid stations, and they get checked off. I don't know how well that got updated, but definitely worked well to tell where everyone was.
And that's kind of
a bunch of people posting.
Yes, that's something that's all going to happen kind of behind the scenes, and we feed the population of that. Like, that's something that I keep track of, and a couple other key people generally keep track of that, like at each, at certain aid stations. So we'll be kind of updating that. It's not foolproof though. So ultimately, again, the responsibility falls to the crew and to the runners to update everybody as far as what's going on. But yeah, we do use spreadsheets like that just to kind of do our best to keep track. So let's see. So other thing, I just kind of wanted to go a little bit more on this worksheet here. Each one of these addresses, you can either enter it manually into your car GPS. Like if you have a navigation system, sometimes that works better than a phone system. Just like your Waze may work fine most of the time, but when you get to Rogers Orchard, your phone might not work. So you might not be able to, it might not figure out where you are, but maybe your phone, you know, the system that's built into your car might, if you have a newer car, just a little thing, or your old GPS. Like if you have one of those handheld Garmin things that used to stick on your windshield, it's a good time to bust it out because you didn't want to throw it out because it cost you $400 at the time. But now you have it, and this is the time to bring it with you and make sure it's charged. So you can either enter this address, or if you have this open on your phone or a tablet, you can click on this and it's hot linked. Each one of these addresses are hot linked to the approximate aid station location. So, but when you get there, the key thing is these addresses are not always 100% spot on. You always want to look for the blue blazes and kind of picture in your mind where they are on one side and where they are on the other side, so that when your runners come in, they're like, okay, because these are all like places where it's like a little bit weird sometime, and they get disoriented after being under the lights and everything. And you point them out the right direction. And as you're there, you tell them you're going to look in this column to the next crossing, and you're going to find out where you're going, whether it's a major one or just a little station. And you're going to tell them how many miles it is, because that's what they're going to want to know, right? They're going to say like, okay, how long till the next aid station? You know, so have that together so that you can get them what they need and get them out of there. So,
and also look for the cars, because there's always going to be, unless you're the very first one or two runners or you're totally by yourself, look for the other cars, because there's going to be other crews at these different waypoints and aid stations, as we're calling them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Also, as a crew, a couple of these road crossings are major roads. Yes. And dangerous. So be very cognizant. Like one of them is near, I think it's near the reservoir, that main road that you have to cross. That's like 44. Yeah, that's ridiculous. When you cross 66, when you leave Gaida to go over Bezic, that's like going on a highway.
You should wait for the light to cross there.
There is a crosswalk there.
Press it and use it, you know. Give up the 5 minutes.
Yeah, and there's a few other like on the road sections as the runner where you should be cognizant of where you're crossing, because I know like on Country Club Road where you're running, you're actually crossing some entrance and exits for the highway. So both as the runner, know your road sections and where you're crossing roads, because it can be very dangerous. And like I know Country Club Road people drive like idiots, so you know what I mean. Route 68 in Durham is another one. Just
Berlin Turnpike.
Berlin Turnpike is awful.
And for that matter, I have to say that I think initially we were, it depends on, you know, everybody's going to be doing these things at different times. Some people are going to do that in the daylight, and some people are going to do that at night. And some few the lucky few are going to do this in the night in the rain. And so having having reflective gear, you think like, oh, this is a trail run. Why the hell do I need reflective gear? Bring reflective gear, or like your pack, like, you know, put flashies and stuff like that on it, please, for yourself.
And so the bears know that you're coming, even
correct. It's like a dinner bell.
Yes.
Now, I had a quick question. Billy, you always have a pretty big entourage, like your brother, family, friends. I just wanted to know, like, is there anything, because I know, you know, sometimes you have the kids with you, and is there anything that you think you'd like to share as far as like things that you think are helpful if you are going to have like children or family members or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the way that my brother and I have done it is, sometimes we'll have one stable crew member that does the whole thing, but then we'll have kind of sub crews take different sections and divide and conquer and kind of figure out where it makes sense based on, people's schedules, who can help out when. I'm pretty food motivated, so is my brother. So we usually actually try and plan it around food, like you will have a pizza at this spot. But there are places that are better for children or, other spectators than others. And you probably need to have a little bit of the tribal knowledge of where those spots are that aren't like at the busy roads, because those are the places that you you want them to come. But if anyone is curious about those spots where it might be good to bring kids, they can feel free to reach out, and I can highlight a couple spots that I think is good for it.
Great. Yeah. Hey, on that note as well, I think last year we did have some problem with some larger vehicles out there too. So we're going to ask people not to bring, big. It's okay if you want to bring a like an RV for the crew to sleep in, but we can't have that at most of these aid stations. That's just not going to work because again, number one, we're trying to stay under the radar. Number two, your runner can't sleep in there anyway. And then number three is that it just, we're trying to save space in those parking spaces because, many of these were kind of really pressed there, and we don't want to, we don't want anybody getting hurt from the crew either, so.
Yeah, and those bigger vehicles, especially like the crossing Celeste was talking about on 44 near the reservoir, if you have a big vehicle parked there, it's really hard for the runners to see. And it's hard for the crew to help the runners get across. So, because we always help the runners as they're coming in, we try to make sure that because you're tired and you're not really like thinking straight all the time. And if you don't have a pacer with you, you might not be totally focused on the traffic. You might be focused on just getting across to the trail. So we always try to help people through there. But if there's huge vehicles, we can't see around them and we can't always get around them. So that makes it difficult.
Yeah,
very
excellent
good
point.
Gotcha.
Oh, and another thing, while we're talking about safety, and one of Art's rules that we should mention is there's no alcohol allowed. Like, especially if you're crewing and you're driving, there's no alcohol allowed at all. And a lot of these parks, you're not allowed to have it anyway. So, wait till you get home.
We don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the event in any way, especially like at that finish line, right? I mean, we've been lucky. We've never had any issues at that spot. And I always thought that we would. But like, we don't want to get all of a sudden, just picture this. We're sitting at the end park and all of a sudden there's a report of a bunch of kids drinking beer down in the parking lot. So the cops come and say, hey guys, it's 2:00 in the morning. You all better go home. And then like, how about the next people who are running in? Like they want to be able to finish their race too. And it would be criminal not to have that, to let them finish what they started. So we want to make sure that everybody can enjoy it. So good point. Yeah, there you go.
So I know that there were some people who couldn't be part of the conversation tonight because they were either flying on planes or traveling or whatever, and they had some thoughts about things they'd like to share as well. So do you want me to share those at this point?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, cool. So Matt Gerber, who has run it, he's crewed it, he's paced it, he's done a lot with the cut. He's a really great guy, and he and his family have also been a large part of helping out with other runners as well. He said that as far as like for what crews and pacers should know, sometimes runners, nutrition is a problem for them. You want to make sure that they're staying on top of all of their nutrition. They might say that they aren't hungry or they don't want to eat. Try to get some calories in them somehow. I know Tobias, are you vegan technically or vegetarian? I think you're
vegetarian.
Right.
So
he's a lazy vegan.
So as a vegetarian runner, we had some trouble getting some calories in him. But yeah, you want to make sure that you have a plethora of options for your runners so that or your runner, so that they have things that they can eat that might appeal to them if they're not necessarily feeling hungry. And then also salt sticks, salt tabs, whatever it is that they use. Same rules apply for this as any race. Like you don't want to try new things on race day necessarily. So you want to make sure that you've tested these things out on your training runs, but have them available. And then another thing Matt said that I thought was kind of a good idea. If you aren't going to use a pacer for the entire or, not the entire race, but for a lot of the race, save your pacers for when you know you're going to be tired, when you know it's going to be dark, so that they have fresh legs, they're running with you, and that you're using them when you're going to need them most, and you're going to need that pick me up the most.
They know that the hallucinations most of them are not real. So they're able to help identify, when there's actually rats eating at your feet and when it's, not happening. So
unless you have a hallucination as a crew member because you haven't slept for 48 hours and I still think what I hallucinated is real. So
I'm gonna side with you. Okay, hallucinations are real.
okay.
I swear I saw a fire in the woods. It was towards the end. I want to say it was like Clapboard Hill Road, the haunted section, the one that Art says is haunted.
Yes.
Yep.
Tobias's girlfriend, Veronica, shout out to Veronica. She's an awesome
Big
crew
shout
person.
out.
So
She's so
big.
great.
She's so helpful. She was in her car.
Now, so
Yeah, and she's been awesome. And she was in her car and I was in my car, and we were waiting for Tobias. I think it was you, right? With Bessick at this point. Or maybe it was you or Will and Bessick at this point. Or maybe
at
you, Will and
Clapboard?
Bessick. Yeah.
Yeah, last year, it was me and Bessick.
Okay, so we were waiting for them to come in, and I was sleeping in my car, or I thought I was awake, but I think I was sleeping. And I saw a fire in the woods, and I went running out of my car and running out into the woods. And Veronica stopped me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Because there's a fire. I need to talk to those people sitting at the fire." And she's like, "There's no fire, Michelle. There's nobody there." And I swear I saw it. So, yeah, so my whole point was like, make sure your pacers and your crew are lucid, because you definitely don't want to have them being the ones who hallucinate and get you off course or get you
Right.
off track.
Right on.
Definitely. And if you're pacing, it's also really important to keep on top of your own nutrition, your own hydration, your own salt, because all that stuff can bite you in the ass just as easily, especially when you're doing something like a longer pacing section, something like 20, 30 miles. It can take you a long time that you might not be prepared for, especially if your runner is having some issues. So definitely staying on top of your own stuff is really important, and it's hard to keep in mind because you're so focused on your runner and trying to get them to eat, to drink, to do all this stuff, and it might slip your mind to do it yourself.
Yeah,
Same for the crew. The crew, if they're going to be there all day, needs to eat and drink and
not have just one person for your crew. That's a tall order, and a very, unless your runner's able to go multiple stops without you, it's hard to do that. So not recommended.
Yeah.
Because somebody's got to drive home at the end of this too.
Yeah. Well, the Facebook group can help with that, right? People can kind of connect with each other.
Yes.
And team up. Like some people might only have one crew person, but they should definitely pair up and team up and cooperate. And note that if you're doing that and helping another runner that's not like part of your original group, and your runner bails and you all leave, you could be leaving a runner either without crew or with one crew left. And that kind of happened that first or second year. And that sometimes people will pick up that slack, but that's kind of unfair. So you need to be really careful about those kinds of things.
Calories of the cut, I think, is real. Because a lot of people, their first time doing the cut, they may have only done races where there are regular aid stations that are not self-provided, and they may have done just shorter races, ones that are like 12 hours or less, and they've survived on goos and small bites and that type of thing. But when you're doing a race that's 30 plus hours, you as crew and you as runner, you really need to talk about preparing for like real calories, because you can't get through 30 plus hours without a real meal. And you're not going to have probably a cooking surface or something like that. So you got to think about like what's going to preserve and what's going to be there, and have a lot of different options. That's something that I really recommend that crews talk about with their runners. And there's enough things out there, like you guys said before, where you can go out and stop and pick up fast food or, pizza or something like that. But you want to have an idea of where those places are going to be beforehand, so that way you can provide those calories for your runner, because you're going to need them.
Great point there.
One one of the things I can suggest is to use Ziploc bags. And whether it's, if your runner can handle 200 calories an hour or 300 calories an hour, figure out what that amount is and try to put that amount of calories into each Ziploc bag so they kind of know what they're getting. And it's easier for them to keep track of the number of calories that they're getting, throughout the day.
Yes. That's awesome, Brian. And also that saves time. So let's do some quick math here. Okay. So there's 20 stops here. If you take 3 minutes at each stop, which would be really fast, how much have we added to our race?
An hour.
An hour. Yes, Celeste, look at you. So you win.
The slow girl knows.
I said it, but I was on mute.
I'm sorry you didn't phrase it in a question. So, all right, Michelle, what else? What are we missing here? What do we got to cover here?
Well, I mean, I think we covered a lot of the big stuff, a lot of the things about nutrition and making sure that we're respectful of the course and making sure that we know the course. So that's all like the logistical stuff and that's all the important stuff. But I'm also curious, like, what are some fun or funny or really ridiculous stories that you have? Oh, Andy raised his hand right away. So I want to hear about that.
No, I was hoping to be able to jump in because I have to bounce off the call, but one of the things I wanted to mention, and that you just said it, which is really swell. There's so much serious stuff about getting through 112 miles of really hellish terrain. And we spoke kind of on the beginning about, keeping things positive. I think this goes for both crew and pacers, although I think it's easier for crew to do because they've got the time on their hands. Make friends. There's so much opportunity with the different groups to become buddies, share numbers, check in on each other. If like the Baker boys. And by the way, Billy, give your dad my best. I miss Bob. He's a great guy. Perfect example. Like me and Billy's dad are friends on Facebook now because of volunteering at the Cut. And he's just a hell of a dude. But you can if it's an out-of-state crew and they're trying to find cheeseburgers for their runner, a la Hundo Joe eats, the local cat's going to know where the closest Wendy's is or whatever. It just really take advantage of this stuff. I think as an ultra community, whether we're the distance runners, the people who support or learn from it, it's such a family atmosphere, and take advantage of that. It means so much. It's going to make that, roughly 40 hours that much more tolerable and much more meaningful. And I do want to just give a quick shout out. I'm sorry if I'm pulling away from things. I was looking at the runners list or the entrance list before we got on the call, and I'm really stoked to see so many friends on there. I really just want to implore anyone who's involved in the Cut this year to do everything in their goddamn power to get Jackie Smith to Guilford. Period.
Oh, yes.
Thank
Right
you.
on.
Yes. Oh, she's doing it.
No shit. And it's cooked.
Yeah, no, she's doing it.
Love y'all. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really tickled to think that you invited me. So
Thank
cheers.
you, Andy.
Thank you,
All right,
Andy.
Take care.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye-bye.
He's so
Okay.
great.
Yeah, he is.
It's good.
He's another person, like he's very understated, but he knows when to push people and give that tough love on the course. And then he knows when to give that positive reinforcement, like when we were talking about Bessick and his feet and that whole situation, Andy is really kind of the guy that you want in your foxhole, as they say, as you're going through this. And that's really the most important thing, right? Is like picking your people and knowing who you really want when the going gets tough. Who is it that is really going to help you get through this? Because ultimately this is a mental game as much or more than it is a physical game. And I mean, I've never run the entirety of the Cut. I've run portions of it. And I know how punishing it can be, but you just have to have the right people supporting you.
Very good. Well said.
Thanks. So yeah, I want to hear funny stories though. I mean, we like Andy said, we've been keeping it kind of like, real and factual, but what are some crazy things that happened to you? Or that happened to your crew or pacers?
2 years ago, really funny, we were at Bluffhead and Jimmy was running and Mark Kelly was crewing him. And then all of a sudden, Mark Kelly went running with Jimmy, left his car, brand new car, open, everything out, and he just left. And he was just pacing him to the end. And we're like, okay, let's take care of this for you.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
That was funny.
So like
Yeah.
the spirit overtook him and he was just like,
And he just
go.
left his car. I mean, like open and everything out. And yeah. Leave it to Kelly.
I think that it's important to, one thing that I've learned is that it's important to rely on people for help there and not try to do everything yourself.
Oh yeah.
First year that we did it, we got to the top of Higbee, and Jordan said, "You know what? Hey, I think I might have an issue with my feet. There might be something going on with my feet." So, we had talked about this all day. So she pulls her shoes off, and sure enough, there's just like blisters like everywhere. And it's like, I forget what mile that is, probably like 70 something. And so right away, somebody has a kit with, to lance the blisters and to do all that. So right away, I like pick up the knife and I'm like ready to start operating. And I was the guy who had been up all night running and was at mile 70 something. And I have like shaky hands on a good day. So like we needed, at that point, what we needed was somebody from a crew to step in and be the voice of reason. So that's another just thing to talk about as a crew. Like, we talk about pressing your runner forward. There are times like times of heat stroke and other medical issues where you want to pull the plug and say, this is over right now, and that's okay too, because, honestly, we want everybody to finish, but we also, we want everybody to live, right. And to, I don't know, to get through this,
Art, I remember the scalpel incident, and I think it was Steve who brought that whole kit.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember, we were all singing. I was with you on that stretch, and we were all singing a song. I cannot remember what that song was. I'm sure it was trail running related or
Joy and Pain, Sunshine and Rain. Here we go.
Yes, that's a staple now of the cut. Yes.
Yep. No doubt. Good times.
That's an apt song for sure.
Yep.
Wildlife on the cut is real too. We joked about shadow bear, but my brother actually did see a bear. Last year doing it, I've seen countless snakes, porcupines, deer. It's something that a lot of people live in Connecticut and they don't necessarily see the wildlife all the time, but it's there. You're in some pretty cool forested sections along that Metacomet Ridge, and keep your eyes open, and you'll probably see something pretty cool that you'll be able to tell a good story about.
Yeah, skunks, snakes in trees, which was pretty bizarre, right? So lots of good stuff.
I've never seen a porcupine. That is one animal. I mean, obviously I know that they can be dangerous, with the quills and whatnot, but that's one I wouldn't mind seeing. So yeah.
I would pet it.
Yeah, sort of poke along kind of slow.
You would pet it.
I would pet it. Although last year we saw an albino deer and it was just laying, like it was the cutest thing that's ever happened to me. And it took every ounce of self-control to not pet it, because I was so afraid if I pet it, the mother would reject it. And it was so beautiful. Such a sweet baby. I have a picture. I'll post it later. So cute.
There you go. So speaking of posting, and not to interrupt any further stories, but I am going to I'll have an updated list of the road crossings, with the understanding that some of the mileages are approximate because things have changed quite a bit. But you pick up a mile here, you lose a mile there. At the end of the day,
is it 115 now?
Yeah, something like that. It depends.
That's not even funny.
Yeah. It's, I mean, there's not been anything super significant added to it. It's mostly just like a reroute, where it makes a left hand instead of right hand turn or whatever. So, But so I'll post that. We'll also have a a list of all the road crossings that I showed on the screen. So that we're going to have updated. And then we'll have a list of just some general tips for crews, something that runners can pass off to their crew to just kind of let them know, and kind of talks about some of the things that we talked about tonight. So let's see, what else are we missing here?
Well, I wanted to know, is there anything that you feel is like crucial that crews should bring that they might not think about? Because we have talked about nutrition, obviously. We've talked about water. One thing we didn't touch on, but I'm sure people will probably realize this, ice. You definitely want to have a ton of ice if it's hot. But what other things? The first aid kit Sarah mentioned.
Extra batteries and extra headlamps. Every year, if it's not somebody in your group, someone else is going to go and you can be a hero. I've done a lot of ultras. I've never had a headlamp go until I did, and it was the last race. And when I had an extra, and without an extra, your race is shot. And that's the best gift that you could give to somebody that you're not going to know who it's going to be, but you'll be able to give that gift if you have an extra.
Right on. That's true. I've had my headlamp get tangled so that I couldn't wear it. And long story, but I had a backup and that saved me. And the 2 times that I did it, both times somebody at Castle Craig their battery died after the castle, coming through that, one of the nastiest sections of the course, headlamps out. So, yeah, that's important. The thing I would add to this is just a little first aids, like your first aid, obvious. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but, bring everything that you need. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is that you're not talking about like putting a little Band-Aid on a blister. Sometimes like you gotta like just like wash the feet off because they're like muddy and you can't do anything with them. So I think I like to bring our 2 little those little pans that you wash your dishes in, the little plastic tubs. I bring 2 of those, and put warm water in one, and warm soapy water in one, and then you can dunk them in the other one. And then a nice towel that you can use on the feet to kind of just get down to the base layer. You do that, and then Stacy, I took care of her feet one year just using that, and then whatever you're putting on there, Desitin, right? Like you can't have too much Desitin. I gotta say that.
Yeah. And as a crew, I mean, this seems basic, but like if it's your first time doing a long one, like having a couple chairs in your car, critical for
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I forget it every year. Yeah, chairs.
Is always big. And then for runners, plan with your crew extra clothes, because there was one year where the rain was just torrential, and when you're out there for 30+ hours, there's nothing better than getting a dry set of clothes. So having that sort of planned out with your crew, and if you break it into 10-hour sections, I'm going to wear this for this, that for that. Put them in baggies. It's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and you know what?
Garbage bags.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Yeah. I didn't bring shoes one year, so my feet got wet. Like, as the dew can be pretty heavy at night, and my feet got drenched at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, something like that, and they were wet like the whole time. Because I ended up running across the field like 20 times, at the finish line. And so my feet were wet for hours as a crew member, right? And so having a pair of shoes is a good thing. So,
and blankets. I always bring my Snuggie. And I know I look ridiculous, and I do not care, because I have my anti-gravity chair. So I've got my chair, I've got my Snuggie, and it gets cold overnight, even if it's really, really hot during the day. And I don't like to sit in my car when I'm crewing, because I'm always kind of afraid I'm going to miss my runner as they come through. So I sit outside the car and I just kind of wait, and just having that little blanket or Snuggie in the chair, it just gives me that little extra warmth and comfort, so that I don't worry about when they're coming through missing them.
Insect repellent. Speaking of being out at night or early in the morning, that stretch just to get from the parking lot to the start of the cut, it's so buggy in there. So
Yeah.
the whole first section's pretty buggy. So
Yeah, that's true.
And then another thing that I started doing, and I think Tobias liked it, and I think Bessic liked it. I would bring lights for the trunk of my car, and like just not anything too overpowering because again, we don't want to be obnoxious when we're in different neighborhoods, but just like, Christmas lights that you can string that are just LED lights, or just like I have like this little mini disco kind of light, and it just does enough.
Strobe light,
Yeah,
black
yeah.
light. It kind of like,
Exactly.
okay, it pulses with the music, subwoofers. It's good,
But yeah, like those things. And then just putting up signs, like I know a couple of times, during the cut, like we've held signs or we put them up in the woods or whatever, just to encourage runners, just, keep going or whatever. And I think people do appreciate that.
That's great. Yeah.
Also come with a thick skin, because your runner is, well, if you're crewing me, is not going to be pleasant at all times. Yeah, I always warn my crew and pacers, like, there will be swearing. I will not be nice.
Truth.
Yeah.
sorry
Yeah.
for what I said at mile 87. That T-shirt, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
I did last year. I made one of my crew. She was pacing me, and I was so in a bad place, and she was just being nice to me, and it didn't go well. Didn't go well. I don't think she'll ever crew me again. But don't be nice to me. Don't be
I'm
nice
sure
to
she'll
me.
crew you again. I'm sure she will. But
I
yeah,
don't know. I made her cry.
I know that when we've talked about the foot thing, but when Bessic was having his particular issues with his feet, he just kind of, it was me, B-Rock, and Tobias, and he just kind of looked at all three of us and he was like, F you, F you, F you. And he was like, I hate all of you. So, but we're friends now.
Yeah, that
just
sounds like me. I'm just like, shut the F up, F off. I don't want to hear it. Like, leave me alone. Yeah. And of course, Selena was with me too, and she's just like, okay, drink. She don't care. But yeah, I'm not pleasant, so I apologize in advance. Except I'm not sorry, but it's fine.
Gotcha. So yeah, so I think we covered a lot of the good stuff tonight. I think like one of the key points, again, especially if you're new to this, like reach out to the other people there who are crewing early as you can, because you know what, they're going to be your friends for the next like 2 days. So and otherwise, because you can like get through so much by saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to cover this next aid station for you because I'm going to basically our times are overlapping or whatever, so you help each other out, or, hey, I'm going to, and it turns into this anyway, right? I mean, you're all good people. So like, hey, I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts. You want anything, or what can I get you? So look out for each other too, as crews, because you're doing God's work, right? So,
and it's magical watching the community come together at something like this. It really is magical and life-changing if you really pay attention, get involved with it and whatnot. Like crewing that first year, I crewed Tom, and it changed everything. I had never completed an ultra race before. Like, I had done ultra distances for fun, and everything changed after that for me, for people around. Like, it's a magical experience. So if you do have the opportunity to crew or run or pace or whatever, take advantage of it, because it's epic.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a great way to dip your toes in. I can't tell you how many people during the 2 years that I ran it got their distance PR just like walking and running through the woods, or was the first time they ever ran at night in the woods. Lots of people there's lots of people who just don't do that, right? And like, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is cool. I kind of like this. So, it's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to having a good, safe, and memorable, making some memories with everybody out there. So, that's. I don't know what you guys have to add at this point. What do you think?
Brian mentioned, maybe doing this with your son. Is your son Tommy thinking about maybe doing this?
Well, not this year.
No, I know, but in the future, potentially.
Yeah, we might do in the next couple of years. I mean, we would I don't know if we would do the whole cut, but we would definitely do the back half.
Awesome. And Billy, how about your, kids or your brother's kids? I know they're still pretty little, but
Pretty little, yeah.
yeah,
My oldest are 11-year-old twins, and my youngest is 2. So we
yeah.
got a ways. But
A little ways.
yeah, we got a ways. But it's an inspiring event for everyone that gets to be a part of it. And Art, so much kudos to you for being the brainchild and sustaining this year after year after year and doing it for nothing, right? To ensure that there's money that goes back to Connecticut State Forests and parks. For those that are coming from out of state and out of town, you're going to see a side of Connecticut that you never even could imagine. It is beautiful. It is rugged. It's breathtaking. It's a really, really cool course, and you'll have trouble racing anything else like it anywhere. So have fun. And if your crew, take some time to pace, because even if you just pace one section, if you're not a runner, you get an idea of what it's like, and it might inspire you. Get out there on the trail. Like as others said, towards the end of the race, your runners are going to be going slow. Your fresh legs will be able to get you through that 4, 5, 6 mile section and maybe provide a smile to the face of your runner, at least keep them, checked in and sane in the game. But take advantage of this opportunity. It's pretty special.
Excellent. Well said, Billy. So, Michelle, unless you have anything else to add at this point? Okay, then, hey, I just want to thank all of you for joining tonight to help people who are considering crewing at the CUT112. I appreciate the hell out of you guys and everybody who volunteers to make this happen. It's a true community event, and we want to keep growing in the community to do that. So if you're listening and you want to volunteer, just reach out. We'll figure out something for you to do, So to anyone who's made it this far, of course, seek professional help, and we'll see you all in a mile.
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half.
All right. All right.
Woo! Connecticut. Woo!
All right, go get him, Jimmy.
Thanks, Art.
Go get him, Matt. Yeah. All right, go, go, go. You're starting, yep. Go, go, go.
I know, but I have to. Yeah!
Go get him.
Bye, guys. See ya. Bye.
Yep, we did. Sorry. Go, go, go. We did. We started. So
Yeah,
whenever
I know,
you. Sorry.
I got one at the course, so I better just go.
Oh yeah. All right. Go, go, go.
Yes, we're going.
Yep. Go get him. Good job, guys. Go, go, go. All right. Go get him, Matt. And we're off. Yep, there we go. Anybody wants can just, yeah, we're going.
All right, we started.
All right, yep, we did. Go get him, guys.
Why am I doing this?
All right. Go, go, go. Go get him. Go get him, Brinks.